Hello, everyone. So this is the third part of Evolving in a Crisis series, and we've got a real treat for the final part of the series. I've got here with me one of the godfathers of recruitment and a personal mentor, a bit of a guardian angel for my own career, John O'Sullivan. And for any of you in recruitment who don't know who John O'Sullivan is, because you've been living under a rock or something like that, John is John is the chairman of Elite Leaders today, but has a illustrious career in the recruitment sector in the UK, having spent years in some of the biggest corporate names. Then led his own business via private equity. One noteworthy was Best International, which got to 130 million turnover in his second year, which he sold successfully. And then for the last decade, John has been a mentor and a coach and a advisor to the recruitment sector via his company Elite Leaders, where I joined him as a member 10 years ago. And as I said, I'm lucky to consider him a mentor. John, thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Affi. Thank you. You're very welcome. It's good to be here. Being old does mean you've seen more recessions than most. And you know, the definition of a recession, as you know, is consecutive quarters of negative growth in a particular economy. But of course, behind that, there's usually a reason. And if I look back at the ones that have affected me most while I've been in recruitment, there was the credit crunch in 2008, and then earlier than that was the one in the early 90s. And of course now this latest recession caused by COVID. And I think, having been through all of those, it does give you a sort of thick coat of armour and some experiences. Although I ought to say that for me, the most important learnings from this latest one are the differences about this one to the others. And if we take, for example, the sort of credit crunch of 08, 09, I can remember that happening, and we could see it coming. Everybody talks about the sort of Lehman's meltdown and people leaving their offices with cardboard boxes, but actually we could see that coming. And there was a problem in the banking system in the world, so we did actually get time to prepare for that recession, and survive through it. And we'll come on to some of the points. How do you survive through that? The other thing that was very different was how quickly, how slowly we came out of that. So it was slow in, you could see it coming, and slow out. I think with this COVID-driven recession, what's really interesting for me, because we're still in it, so we don't know the out. But I was looking through some board notes the other day, one of my companies that I chair, and we raised it as an AOB in February 2020. Should we keep an eye on this COVID thing that is happening over there? And the board's note that day was, we'll keep an eye on it, but we don't think it's going to have a major impact on us. And the rest, as they say, is history. Literally a month later, nobody was working in that office. Everybody was working from home. Furlough had happened, and we know what had happened. Lockdowns had started. So the big difference with this one is, well, two big differences. One, we didn't see it coming, not really. And the other is, it didn't expose a major economic flaw. The pandemic is something that has happened right in the middle of what was a healthy global economic scenario. And in a sense, that's good, because other than the temporary turmoil that it's caused, one should hope and believe that it will go back to that situation once it's over. So what I'm saying about that is, I think it was quick in, and I think it will be quick out as well. I don't want to do what I've seen a lot of commentators do on social media and say it's V-shaped, W-shaped, X-shaped, Y-shaped, because I don't know. And I'm not an economist, but I do talk to economists. And what we do know is that there is a huge pent-up demand in the business and consumer world, that as soon as we are allowed to spend money again, we're going to spend it in its trillions.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's one of the things I came across and I read was, this is an artificially stimulated recession,
Yes.
as opposed to previous ones, which was systemic. There was a problem. There was a toxic debt crisis, and it had to be weaned off. You couldn't just turn a switch and the problem's gone. Whereas once the public health issue is solved, which is the pandemic, the switch goes back on, and there's no systemic problem in the economy that's stopping it from growing. So arguably, you're absolutely right. It
Yeah.
should just grow rapidly.
Yeah. So clearly there will be aftermath problems caused by the length of it. But look,
Yeah.
you've just summed it up perfectly. I think we've said exactly the same thing. And I do think commentators can see that once this falsely stimulated recession is over, that we should go back to massive growth opportunities. And I ought to say, because I was also alive and around and in business in the recession of the early 80s. And when I look back over my career, either as a business owner or as an exec in the corporate world, the biggest periods of corporate growth I personally experienced was in the immediate aftermath of those recessions. Now, that's not true of everybody and a lot of my competitors, but it's certainly true of the companies I worked with at that time. So, to be match fit and ready and prepared for what's to come afterwards, I would say is an absolute key issue, key driver.
And I remember you were bang on back then as well. I remember I went through a right old kicking in the last recession from between 2010 and early 2011. And then you remember I was still with Elite,
Yes.
and I set up Rig Locums in 2011. And you said back then, you said this is the start of a new cycle.
Yep.
And you were absolutely right. Now, and you couldn't repeat the same old thing, but if you were able to innovate and come up with something more compelling, it could rapidly grow. And as you remember, I mean, that business went from 0 to 20 million in 4 years, from 2012 to 2016. And so, how do you see that coming for like, you know, the young recruitment leaders or entrepreneurs across the sector? How do you sense that market coming with that wisdom and experience that you have? How do you share that?
So I think there were a lot of changes in play anyway, Affi. You know, if we look at the business model of recruitment, there's a lot of flaws in it. We know that. And as we had that discussion in 2011 and 12 and said, look, there's a new cycle coming. There's always a new cycle coming. And, you know, even a year ago, if we'd had pre-pandemic, if we'd had this discussion, we'd have been talking about what are the key drivers in client buying behavior, in candidate behavior, technology,
Yeah,
structure within our own companies. We were talking, all these things were in play.
yeah,
What I think, and it is a positive, and I don't, it's not a falsely positive hope. I think the pandemic has accelerated all of those and sped up those changes. You know, a good example, work from home. It's
yeah,
now high on the agenda. It's a hot topic. Everybody's discussing it, but it was imposed upon us. It was always there. It was always underlying, and somebody
correct.
would have tackled that sort of issue in due course. If you look at the way clients are buying now, and I think will continue to buy, it's becoming much more consultative, much more of a partnership-based
Mhm.
solution that clients want. I think that was coming. So
Yeah,
my big hope is that what the pandemic has done is actually allowed us, or allowed the right people and the right companies to surf that wave of change,
yeah.
um, and to accelerate what they perhaps would have done anyway. From
That's
technology, people, business development, all of those elements.
absolutely, and that's a concurrent theme actually. Everyone I've spoken to in this series so far, and beyond that, is unanimously agreed that what in many ways what the pandemic has done has pushed through innovation that was already at the cusp.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Things were already about to happen, and sort of working from home was coming very slowly, very drips and drabs. Some companies were already introducing policies like that, and I think that it's just forced that innovation through.
Yeah, I think so too. I
Yeah,
think so too. There are parallels, aren't there? With, I wasn't alive in the Second World War, but you know, back in then, I don't suppose anybody saw sleeping in tube stations as a high item on their business agenda. But
yeah,
suddenly, we had to cope with it.
yeah, yeah,
And I think the same thing has happened here. Again, I'm not going to call the work from home agenda. A lot of people are calling it the new normal and
yeah,
so on and so forth.
yeah,
This is something that has been imposed upon working people, and they are imprisoned at home.
hmm,
They've made it work well. How it will pan out in the medium to long term, I'm not entirely sure. I think we'll end up with a hybrid
yeah,
where companies have hubs and people can connect to that from a more flexible environment. But there are certainly people that are struggling with working from home. I had a meeting with
Yeah,
somebody.
absolutely,
He's in
absolutely.
his mom's
Well,
house with his laptop on his mom's ironing board. He's
oh,
not.
I know. Yeah, I've seen those a lot. I've seen a lot of viral pics like that.
Yeah,
Um, but you're absolutely right. I personally, my view on that is that our need to be around communities is evolutionary.
yeah,
Like even before we had electricity and internet and anything like that, we human beings have a desire to come together.
yeah, for sure.
So I think that hybrid is probably, for me, my opinion is, if I was a betting man, I'd be saying hybrid is the way.
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting what you say about community, because we had to look at the elite leaders business model. We're
Yeah,
in a sense we're an events company. We, as you know, we had to get everybody together.
yeah,
Once a month, provide food and
yeah,
entertainment,
yeah,
learning opportunities, and suddenly that stopped, and
yeah.
we went completely online. As you know,
Mm,
interestingly, our membership has roughly doubled in terms of
amazing,
numbers since March
amazing.
last year. And you think, well, that's really odd. Why did that happen? And it's for exactly for what you just said. People want to feel part of a
Sure.
community. We were at the beginning of this, and when we were, there were three things I said to people. Number one, keep calm and be in control and be a true leader. Make sure that never in my life can I remember when leadership was so important. So learn what you are as a leader and how you need to lead your business and your people through this crisis. Secondly, was how to develop, maintain, and plan your relationships with your clients. What are you going to be and what are you going to morph into and look like post recession, and make sure you're laying those plans now.
Yeah,
And the third one is really obvious. Just make sure you've got you're well financed,
right.
because you can go through a lot of things, but you'll only ever go bust once.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
a lot of recruitment companies do live on fairly thin cash flows. So I think
hmm,
it is and was important to make sure that you're properly financed, not just to survive, but that you can spring out and thrive after the end of this. So I guess that's it. Become a leader and connect with your people really well.
hmm.
Make sure that you have a plan for your client and business development relationships post that, and be well financed in order to stay in the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant advice, and it's so well rounded as well. It's that allows us to finance leadership and also looking out and aligning to clients. Yeah, very powerful.
And I think actually you touched on it a moment ago. A lot of companies, I think that we're through this, we'll be fine. But of course, things like deferral of VAT, uh, CBILS loans, etc., they're all still debt. So there are a lot of
Yeah, of
companies
course.
going to come out of this heavily indebted, and that's where the finance piece comes in. We can be relieved that we got away with it,
Yeah,
but now you've
you're
got
still in
to.
debt. Yeah, yeah, debt is debt. Yeah, you got to pay the piper sooner or later.
Yeah.
No,
If I was starting a business now, which I'm not, by the way, but if I was, that my number one mantra would be to surround myself with the best team available. I want, it's all about the people. I mean, it
mm,
really is. I know there's tech and I know there's all sorts of things that come into play, but if you really want to be in the Champions League, you need to have players in your team who are capable of operating in that sort of environment. So
yeah,
that would be a key to me, to make sure you hang on to, you attract, you retain and motivate the best people that you can possibly attract to your business. And that sounds counterintuitive, but in a downturn, but actually it's my number one thing.
yeah. And I guess you have to pay for that. And I often find that even in downturns, you think it might be bargain basement time, but actually to acquire the best talent, they're not out of work, but they might be looking for better opportunities.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
And on that note, Affi, I mean, I talk to lots of people all the time. There are an awful lot of good people who perhaps it isn't front of mind to move at the moment, but they do have some muscle memory about how they maybe were treated by their own employer
correct.
during the downturn, and it's on their mind to leave.
Yeah,
So now is the time I'd be hunting for the very, very best talent in the market. And you're absolutely right. There is this thought that it's going to be easy. It's not. I
no,
think it's going to be really tough for us and our clients, by the way.
yeah,
That we need
yeah.
to educate our clients. It's going to be tough for them as well. There's going to be a real, I hate the phrase war for talent, but it does sum it up. There is going to be a war for talent. So
Yeah, and there's also the war for selection of talent. It's when you have a market with which is there's a surplus, then also combing through and finding a needle in a haystack is also very difficult. And
yeah,
the time commitment when companies are trying to get themselves back on their feet, interviewing, selecting, processing, that's also a very time-consuming task, which
yeah,
which you can get wrong.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So in that, my three pieces of advice managing a downturn is people, people, and people. As you know, I hadn't even started my own business at 30. I was still learning a lot in corporate life. So I worked for Computer People, which ultimately became owned by Adecco. So in my 30s, I was still learning the corporate ropes.
yeah,
Um, I perhaps would have advised myself to maybe go and do my own thing a little bit earlier than ultimately I did. And having done that, I would have given myself more dry. You said earlier about growing best from 0 to 130 million turnover, which sounds fantastic. It could have been 230 or 330 or 4. Why not? If you think about recruitment, we don't make anything, we don't manufacture anything. It's all about taking market share. It's a massive, massive market. And no players have got significant double digit market share in the sectors that they operate in. And many companies are quite happy with their lot. And that's great, by the way. I'm not sort of criticizing those companies. But the advice I've given myself was to go harder and faster for growth. And why not aim to become a much, much bigger entity and create that sort of stakeholder value, which we ultimately did. But I think we could have done it faster. Be more brave, go for it.
yeah. Brilliant, great advice. But I think ambitious people like yourself will always say that, wouldn't you? I mean, you'd always want to be driving for bigger and better, right?
Yeah, and it's not the route for everybody, and I know that. But I guess the advice is don't impose any limits.
Yeah,
There really aren't any. Just if you're just a little bit better than your competitors, and you're in the right sectors, and you're in the right geographies, and you have the kind of organisation that can attract top talent, and you're properly financed. So there's a lot of givens
yes,
in there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Go for growth. And
yeah.
so for me personally, whilst I'm very proud of the growth I've achieved in the past, the advice I give my 30-year-old self is go for more.
Go
Because
for more.
yeah, go for more.
Love it, love it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I see it as much more specialised.
Okay.
I think the day of the generalist is probably numbered. I think you've got people talk often about inch wide, mile deep. I'm sure I was the first person to say that. I wish I'd patented it. Um, but it's true, isn't it? If you hope to dominate a market or to be a serious player in that market, you've got to know it. And I know you know that, and
Yeah,
I know you understand that. But I think that's going to be more the case. And that's not to say you can't be in more than one sector. You can. You can be a
that's
specialist
right.
in a number of
That's right.
different areas. So you can have a lot of inch wide, mile deep players.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly what I've done.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know, and
Yeah.
I totally agree with that too. I think obviously you've got to have the right sort of people and specialists in those markets as well. So I
Hmm.
think that is a change that's coming. Um, I think a lot of the change is around. We mentioned it at the outset about how clients want to buy, and I think clients now want a more consultative, partnership-based, professional approach from their talent partner. Um,
Absolutely.
Thank the Lord for that, because I think
Yeah,
that's
thank
coming.
God.
And
It's about time.
I think it's here,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and about time, as you say. Uh, I think we're going to become much closer to a true profession than
Mm.
we've been in the past. And I think we're going to be much more tech enabled as well. There's some really cool technologies around that can help us and enhance the way that we get involved with our clients. I don't think tech will ever replace great recruiters
I agree
and
with
great
you.
business developers. It'd still be all around people. But the way that we win deals, the way that we deliver deals, and the way that we land and expand with our clients, I think are key changes that are coming in the market in the next five
Yeah.
years.
What demoralizes me and my team quite a bit is when we see bad practice and typical transactional recruitment still winning in some cases, not often, but in winning in some cases, when you're doing everything right, you're trying to be transformational, you're really going the extra mile. But it's encouraging to see someone of your wealth of experience to see that as a dying breed, because I think the key thing is to keep fighting in that direction. We're in the right way. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think it's long overdue. You know,
Yeah,
if you ask the CEOs, and somebody did a few years ago, of the top 100 corporates in the UK, you know, how close to the top of your priorities is talent?
yeah,
All of them were number one or number two.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Question two: would you, as the CEO, talk to a recruitment company?
yeah.
Didn't even make the top 10. So their number one priority has been something that they will outsource internally or
Yeah.
outsource externally.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. And now
Exactly. Yeah,
around
yeah,
the board tables of the big corporates has got to be talent. It's going to get much, much more serious. I still think that a lot of clients think it's going to be easy to hire post pandemic, but the storm of Brexit is here. The fact that lots of people
IR35.
want to move. They're all the skills shortages that existed in the STEM sectors before COVID are still there, probably
Right.
worse.
Yeah.
Uh, and talent's going to have to move to number one in the agenda. It's then and only then that clients are going to have to seek out and engage with proper professional consultative talent supplying companies.
And it's such a powerful point you just made there. I talk about that actually. I think it's like I use the Game of Thrones analogy that we're here fighting Starks versus Lannisters and all that stuff, but actually the big threat, the White Walkers,
Yeah.
that that's the our clients becoming so disenfranchised with our level of service that actually they go, you know what, my number one problem is recruitment, but the 10th person I'll go to is a recruiter.
Yeah.
And that having that massive chasm in terms of understanding. And then they actually go, I don't think clients want to set up their own talent infrastructures if they could trust an outsourced partner. I think they do it
They could
because,
trust. They could trust, and there's the key word.
that's
Affi.
it. Yeah, 100%. You're right. You're right. There you go. There you go. That's it. We should just call it trust recruitment. There you go.
I've got that. Oh yeah.
No. This is being recorded. I've coined that.
Do you know there are, I think, in analogies, and there are lots of them.
Yeah.
You know, imagine you were going to build an extension on your house, and you decided to do it yourself because you couldn't trust the tradesmen and the project managers, and that could well be the case.
Yeah.
But if you could find somebody who said, "Look, Affi, I'll take all of that from you. It's going to be done in a way that is guaranteed. It's going to be done well. It's going to be compliant. It might cost you a little bit more, but it might not. And you now don't worry about it and get on with running your business and raising your kids." Why wouldn't you? And of course you would.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm having that problem now. I'm trying to do some work in the garage, and I'm struggling to find the right people because the trust ranking. And
Well,
it's
I'd be happy to recommend my builder, but I'm not going to. Not really, because everybody else will want him.
yeah,
And actually, I think in terms of that analogy, because I've done up a lot of properties over the years, it's quite interesting.
yeah,
So, and I see recruitment as moving in that direction. As you
yeah,
know, let me take that problem from you. I'm an expert. You can trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'm plugged into the markets. You're not, and I'll leave you to run your business while I supply you with the fuel that you need. And for me, that's it. That's the
brilliant,
essence of where we're going.
brilliant, brilliant. With the risk of sounding purely sycophantic, I wholly agree with you. That is
Yeah.
that is the future I want for recruitment. I hope that's the way it's going.
And by the way, I wouldn't want any contingent recruiters listening to this thinking that you and or I are being disrespectful. I still think there will be a place for opportunistic recruitment. I really do. I don't think it's dead or over.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think there are some really good players in that market. But I think it will be a secondary consideration rather than a primary. So
yeah.
I'm not predicting the death of contingent recruitment because I don't think that's inevitable. I'm predicting the surge of the professional consultative partnership base. I think there's a lot of pillars to that. We've talked about people, clearly that's high on the agenda, but having the skills on board where somebody in your team, and it might be you, can identify opportunities to sell the kind of things we've just talked about and can go and sell them. I think the owners of companies need to get themselves back out talking to
Yeah.
clients,
Yeah.
And raising the whole thing up the agenda.
Correct.
I think to have the bravery to break some of the norms in recruitment. You hear the debate rage about 180 recruitment, 360 recruitment. I mean, all that, it really tires me. Recruitment is recruitment. And I think smarter companies will separate business development, delivery, and account management. They're different skill sets. To try and encapsulate all of that in one person is, like the football manager who tries to sign the midfield general who can do everything, score goals and, even go in goal if the goalie gets in. Well, good luck with that. Good luck
Yeah.
with having
Yeah.
100
Yeah.
of those, because you won't
Yeah.
find them.
Yeah.
So I think you need to have skill. It's not business developers can deliver,
Mhm.
and delivery people can biz dev, and both of those from time to time can do account management. But I definitely see them as separate skills within a business. If you went into, wouldn't it be a joy, to John Lewis on Saturday to
Yeah.
buy an 80-inch plasma TV screen, I suggest you'd be quite surprised if the guy or person who sold it to you was also the one who then came and fitted it to your wall, and was
Correct.
also the one who then told you how to fix it if there was a problem. Those three elements of that service would have been split out into
Correct.
different skills areas. It's
Yeah.
a bit of a simple analogy, but it does the job for me.
It makes sense. Yeah.
It does make sense. And I think, so my advice would be recognize the not just the skills that you need in your business and the people that they're attached to, but how do you deploy people? What
Yeah.
is clever deployment of those skills? Again, I still sit in board meetings now where I see people being let go because they didn't do a particular number in a particular month.
Mhm.
Well, and if you dig deep into that, it's because they weren't deployed
Correct.
in
Yeah.
line
Yeah.
with what their skills base was.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of norms that need to be smashed. That's one. Another is reward and commission schemes are Neanderthal, in my opinion, and should be, again, you hear people debate about it, but when you take a closer forensic look, they're still operating on schemes that, well, I recognise from the 80s,
Yeah.
that reward all the wrong things.
Mhm.
So they're the key areas I would look at. Make sure that you are in the kind of shape that can respond to and capitalise on the markets that we've predicted are coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And John, correct me if I'm wrong here. My view on that is that a way to solve that problem about deployment is productization. And I think that addresses the external and the internal factor. So you can go to a client and show. Recruiters are notoriously bad at showing their work, right? And if we can show how hard we're working from every step. So from building a talent pool to doing the selection to the onboarding to then retaining, developing the talent, mapping the competitors for our customers, all the things, even offboarding, right? So our placement services are rising massively at the moment. So all those things, and if we can productize that, then I think it becomes easier to deploy people against those. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And again, Affi, as you're probably gathering, I think in pictures. I'm selling a house at the moment, and
Yeah.
I've appointed an agent, and it was actually really interesting selecting which agent to choose. And one of the most intelligent ones, which was the one I appointed, came and did what you just said. They made it very clear what they do.
Yeah.
They
Brilliant.
talked about their database. They showed me their track record, their heritage, their reputation, their marketing, their technology. They've sent drones over the house. I
Yeah.
mean, what they've done is
Yeah.
absolutely the way that they handle viewings of the house, particularly in a pandemic. I mean, it's not my main home, by the way, but it's just remarkable how others, now I'm getting letters from others saying, use us instead, we're cheaper. And I
Yeah.
think you must be joking. No,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
selected carefully.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It's funny, isn't it? The price point becomes irrelevant if you can move up the value chain.
Totally
Yeah,
irrelevant.
yeah,
Totally
yeah,
irrelevant.
yeah.
And again, it sounds obvious, and we've heard that debated hundreds of times in Elite over the years. It's one thing to say it; it's another thing to actually do it. And this has got to be the difference. My worry for a lot of companies is that we'll go post-pandemic and they go, "Let's just go back to the way it was then."
Oh, I know. That does worry me as well. It
Yeah,
really does worry me.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because the thing is, a lot of good is coming out, a lot of bad. Obviously, there's tragic things here happening with the pandemic, but there's also a lot of good that can be taken from the way we move forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. John, has been elevating. Thank you.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, I'd like to thank you for all your years of guidance to me, and also for all the time you've given us just now.
No problem.